All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome from whatever part of the planet you're joining us. Okay. It's Friday the 13th. Did anybody see that association this morning?
I did.
So does that mean they're jinxing the flames? They're going to, or I shouldn't complete my statement. Okay, I will say nothing. Okay, what's the time now? I think it's 1 minute to 5:05. No, it's actually 5:02. Is my wristwatch correct?
Yes, your time is correct. It's 5:02.
Okay. All right, maybe we can start with a brief intro from some of the people here. Just tell us where you're joining from. You can see your name just while we're waiting. Not Dr. Fashola.
It's all right.
Anybody wants to go? Ibiami, where are you joining us from? That's the first
From
thing on my
Edmonton,
screen.
Alberta.
Thank you. Where's Nazo joining us from?
I'm from Toronto.
Oh,
Hi.
wow. Hello, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Rafiat, Calgary, I'm guessing.
Yes, Calgary.
And Chuku, where are you from?
Hi, I'm Jenny from Calgary.
Oh, awesome. And Eboisie?
I'm joining from Lagos, Nigeria.
Yay! Awesome. Help us greet Fashola. His brother is here and just matched. Where's Ima joining us from? Okay, Ima is not there. How about Ogene Fego? Not here. Dushima?
Cambridge, Ontario.
Awesome. Dushima?
Toronto,
Ontario. Wow, looks like Ontario is winning. Okay.
I'm joining from Nigeria.
Oh,
Amana.
you're welcome, Iman. I know it's not past your bedtime. You're welcome. And Kate?
I'm from Edmonton.
Oh, nice, nice, nice. AB or EB?
Joining from Calgary.
All right. Epic? Okay, I think that brings us to 5:05. So welcome everyone. I am so excited this evening. Thank you for tuning in and joining IMG Chronicles. For those who don't know me, my name is Dr. Shayee. I am an IMG, so you don't lose that title. Once you're an IMG, you are forever, I forever identify as an IMG. Some people drop it, but I'm always quick to say in any meeting, provincial, national, after saying all the things I do, I say, oh, so I'm an IMG from, I proudly wear that badge, you know, so be proud of it. Our scars are things to be proud about. So my last name is Akinola. I'm a family physician who works out of Calgary. I'm in academia and I trained in the system. So I completed my residency at the University of Calgary, you know, and why do I do this? I call these IMG Chronicles, you know, detailing our journey, how we all got to this point. We all have different stories. And the most important thing is not the journey, is the destination, you know. We're all going to come in through different pathways, you know, but just keeping our eye on that ball and knowing that timing may be different, you know, eventually the destination is getting your practicing license in Canada. We will all get there, you know. So how do we make it shorter? For those of us who had some experience, how do we make it shorter for the rest of you coming? And that is why I do what I do. And that is why we have today two very important guests. We've got Dr. Toby Fashola and we've got Dr. Olumide Olotu. So please give us some reactions there. Let's give them a very, very, very warm welcome. You know, now while they're still taking our calls, because very soon they'll become too busy to talk to us. So let's give them a warm welcome. You know, so thank you so much. We're excited to have you guys. Thank you for accepting the invitation to share your story with us. And I'm certain we would have more than one or two things to take away from this evening's conversation. So thank you. And with that, I pass on the mic to, who is closer on my screen? Dr. Olotu.
Hello, everyone. My name is Olumide Olotu. Thanks for the very kind introduction. I'm happy to be here and happy to share my story and my journey on how I was able to march into orthopedics here in Canada. A lot of people helped me along my journey to get to this point, so it's only right that I do the same for others who are trying to achieve the same. And I'll just pass it on to Dr. Fashola.
Can I say something before you pass it on? You know, already Dr. Lumide is talking like a Canadian surgeon. So you see the way I was on, my voice was undulating. No, you know, he's just very calm, collected. Surgeons don't shout, you know. So also, also is a big deal. We're so proud of you, Dr. Olotu. So thank you. And yeah, Dr. Fashola.
All right, thank you very much. I'm Dr. Fashola, you can call me Toby. Thank you very much, Dr. Okenla, for the invitation. And thank you for all that you do for IMGs. And thank you for your introduction too. So I trained in Nigeria and I matched to general surgery in University of Toronto. And I'm really glad to be here to share my story and give tips on the journey to matching for surgical residency. Back to you, Dr. Okenla.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So this evening is completely not scripted, right? So I said there's a Q&A. So while we are chatting, please put your questions in the chat box. You know, that's part of why they're here. You know, you may have some things you're wondering about. There's no, so this is a safe space. There is no right or wrong or foolish question. So please, this is your opportunity for the next 5 years. When is residency over? 5 years, right?
Yeah,
all right. So yeah, so keep the chat active. I'll be reading out the questions. I think for me, the burning thing is, so for full disclosure, I didn't know Toby Fashola before he matched. I didn't know Olumide before he matched. I am somewhere in Calgary and they're in different parts of the country, you know, but because of what I do, our stories matter to me. And when I see our stories, so when I say our stories, I'm not just talking of Nigerian IMGs, I'm talking of IMGs countrywide. You know, so people connect with me from all over the country and those stories warm my heart. So I think the week of the match, I must have been on Instagram every evening, just congratulating. And that's how I connected with them, you know. So my first question is, how did you get here? Like, how long have you been in Canada? And through what pathway did you come into Canada? Like, I'm curious, you know.
Okay, maybe I'll go first. My story would be, I say I landed sometime in 2018, but that was just soft landing. I'm sure people who are doing permanent resident routes know that. But I finally moved into Canada in the December 2020. So I've been here just over a year. and about 5 months, 1.5 years. And I came in with the Federal Skilled Workers, which is also called Landed Immigrant and Permanent Resident pathway. And getting here into Canada, I just decided that, oh, it's time to really do everything I could to get into practice. And the first thing you do is you do a lot of research, you do a lot of, you have to have a lot of people to ask questions, which is something that this platform is providing. You have people who have been here for a while, you ask them, what are the pitfalls, what are the things you have to do? So I think I'll give Olumide the mic from here.
Question.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, before we go on, I need to pick Toby's brains on a few things he said. So Toby said he got here in 2020, less than 2 years. So that is mind-blowing. He got here as a permanent resident. So if you're not a permanent resident, you can't apply for residency to start with. So it's only for Canadians and permanent residents. And then the third thing I took from what you said, Toby, is that you did your research. So was it between 2018 when you landed, you started gathering information and then came back ready in 2020?
Okay, so yes, I'll say from that time. But most of the information I got was really in the last few months of 2020. Because from 2018, you would hear that it's not even possible to come into Canada and practice.
Yeah.
So, but when I got in, I got more intimate information about, all the exams, the routes that are available, and what you need to do, the timelines that are important. And, the one thing that I noticed that was very interesting to me was that the few times I called people while I was in Nigeria to tell me, give me information about pathways in Canada, I always heard one thing. They'll say, when you get here, I'll give you more information. When you get here, I'll give you more information. So I was like, okay. But a lot of times, when I then got here, I would just call them, now I'm here. Give me this information that But yeah, so a lot of it was
so
that.
you did a lot of personal research. And then the last thing was you connected with people who had gone before, like people who you saw and you felt their story resonated and you want to be like them when you grow up. So you spoke to those kind of people. All right. So somebody was asking when you did your exams, but we'll address that later, Ijoma, as it's separate. So he's going to tell us all about that upcoming. All right, Dr. Lutton.
Hi, everyone. My story is a little bit different. I came to Canada in 2009 after secondary school, and I did my undergrad here. So, and after undergrad, that was a while ago in 2014, the express entry system wasn't there, and it was a little bit more difficult to get your permanent residency after being an international student. So I worked for a couple years, about roughly 3 years, before I got my permanent residency. And I don't know if you guys know, but getting into medical school as an international student is really hard. But it didn't work out. And so I made a decision to go out of the country for med school. And thankfully, right before I went to medical school, I got my permanent residency. So I went to med school in St. George's University, Grenada for 4 years. And I finished in 2021, but I didn't match last year. And then between last year and this year, a whole bunch of things happened, and thank God I was able to match this year. That's kind of the short and sweet story.
Okay, so let me pull out what I hear. So, so Toby, no, not Toby. So Olumide, med school, he made it seem like it was a walk in the park. It's more difficult to get into medical school than it is for us as IMGs to get into residency, and so many Canadians who were born in this country go out to do medicine and then come back as IMGs like us, right? So that's how difficult it is. So that sets Olumide apart already in that top centile of people. Then you went to the Caribbeans and everything was within a set period. So your 4 years was your 4 years. You didn't have extra time, right? And you said you applied last year, so you didn't match. And a lot of things happened between last year and this year. So was it that, did you sit down, did you improve on your application purposely, or you just submitted the same things you submitted the previous year? Just a
No,
question. You're going to break it down later.
yeah, it wasn't the same application I submitted both years for sure.
Good. So you're going to tell us. All right. So yeah, so I mean, everybody, you've heard them. So completely separate pathways, but the same destination. So Toby, reading about you, I saw that you had trained outside before, completed training in a specialty. Can you speak to that?
All right, so maybe I'll just give the full story.
Okay.
Completed medical school in Nigeria, Obafemi
Okay.
Awolowo University, Great Ife. Anybody from there? That was in 2010, about 12 years ago. And then after NYSC and house job, got into surgery residency in University College Hospital, Ibadan. And that was for 6 years. So the first 3 years you do surgery in general, and then the last 3 years you do a subspecialty training in surgery. Mine was in urological surgery. And then I completed training in 2020, the early parts of 2020. And then this then came over to Canada.
All right.
Yeah, so that's the long and short about the residency training that I've had before coming.
So what I hear is you did urology, but now you matched into general surgery. But surgery. So you completed your training and you came here. And from what you said, you left medical school more than 10 years ago, right? So you're not a fresh grad, yet you matched. Olumide, on the other hand, has never done any training, yet he matched. So Olumide, what was it about you that focused on surgery, or did you have any other specialties in mind that you wanted to apply to? Did you apply to any others, or it was just surgery from the onset?
Okay, so yeah, I'll give a bit of color to the answer. Before I went to medical school, I did my undergrad in kinesiology. And so I already had a bias towards like the MSK system. So going into med school, I knew I wanted to do orthopedic surgery. And so that was my focus from day one. And I tried to do as much as I could to learn more about the specialty and try and get involved with research and other things and try and connect with people in the field. Did I apply to just orthopedic surgery? Short answer is no. Long answer, my first time trying, so last year, I only applied to orthopedic surgery. There were 6 applications for 7 spots, and I only got 1 interview. But on my second try, about a week to the deadline for the submission, I was set on only applying to orthopedic surgery. This for the 5 applications for 6 spots this year. But one of the people that I met over the last year, which I will talk about later on, he was like, you know what, just apply to everything. Just apply to every 5-year program. People switch out of orthopedics all the time. Like, you never know what's going to happen. Just apply to everything. And so in the space of like 5 days, I had to come up with an application for several other different 5-year programs. And so this year I was able to get all the 5 orthopedic interviews, and I got a plastic surgery interview as well, which was very random. But all the other things I applied to, I didn't get an interview for, probably because my application was probably heavily weighted towards orthopedics. But yeah, that's my answer.
So you said some important things here, so when your applications are being reviewed, there's some things that, so you have to apply bearing in mind your end destination, you know, and if you're saying, for example, I'm a family physician, if you are applying to family medicine and I'm looking at all your electives and everything is in surgery, different shades of surgery, that's a red flag for me, right? You know, so now you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt. If you get an interview, how come all these electives? What were your reasons? And don't get me wrong, the fact that it's all surgery does not mean you won't get into family medicine. You just have to be able to explain why. We do procedures all the time. There's an R3 program in family medicine that is a general surgery program. 1 year, they teach you skills rapidly in 1 year, and you go to a rural area and you are the general surgeon, right? So if that is my long-term goal, I can, you know, so the thing is understanding the program you're applying to, seeing what they want, see how you can recreate your previous experience. Don't discard it, you know? And if you are dead set like Olumide, like it is orthopedics or nothing else, then you have to prove that you're ready. So Olumide here had his undergrad dealing with MSK, so that's a plus. And then from what you're saying, you connected with people in that field. So he didn't wait until he graduated to start doing research with people in that field. He was already doing it. You know, there's no small research. The point is you put yourself out there, and he did, right? And then thirdly, he, just like Toby, was also speaking with people. So despite the fact that he had no plans to apply to anything else, he took that advice and spread his tent wide in a few days, and writing a personal statement, putting together you know, a resume for a separate specialty is a full-time job, but you did it, right? Ready to do whatever, like no stone unturned, and it paid off, you know, so thank you. Great, great, great. So now you've told us how you got here. Let us talk about the exams. Exams are important, right? Because if you didn't do well in your exams, that's like the first rate limiting step, you know? So Toby, why don't we go with you first? Like, it's impressive you got here in 2020. So when did you do exam? When did you pass? How did you pass? What were your scores like? Like, we're digging into your privacy. Don't be angry, but we need to know these things, please.
Okay. So I wrote my exams all last year, all of them. I had no exams before coming here.
So wait, are you married? Sorry, I know I'm not supposed to ask this question in a Canadian environment. I just want to know what other responsibilities you had, because some of us are mothers that are breastfeeding, and how we will write these exams in 1 year, it seems impossible. They're just
Okay,
thinking
and
out
actually
loud.
I was working also by work from home. I was working with Alberta Health Services as a COVID-19 contact tracer. But I was also preparing for the exams. So one of the things I did for myself was to, you know, lock myself in. As soon as I got in, I just paid for the QE one. The QE one was in May. I paid for one in May.
Okay.
And then I said, you know what, I've paid for it. I have to get it done. 1 year. In this 1 year, I have to finish all these exams. One thing I would say really is that the longer you are here and out of practice, the less competitive you are. So that's why I didn't want to waste any time. But I also needed to, you know, have money. So I had to work. I'm married, and so all of that had to be there. For the QE1, what I did was to try to understand what was being tested in the exam, and was mostly clinical knowledge. And I also had tried, or I have some knowledge about the USMLEs. I heard that the step 2 CK, that's the clinical knowledge part of USMLE, is very similar to the QE1. And so I just paid for a subscription on UWorld for the step 2 CK. And that's all I was just doing. I was practicing. There's someone here on the call here who I was practicing with. We just do 1 or 2 hours a day, 10 or 30, 20 questions max. And it started getting me to understand, you know, the information. I couldn't study a lot of Toronto notes, but I read family medicine in Toronto notes. I read psychiatry in Toronto Notes, and I think the ethics part of Toronto Notes. So those 3 chapters were things I read in Toronto Notes, but I couldn't cover it. And I'll say that in preparing for QE1, the most important resource was the practice test on the MCC website. Though it was pricey, yeah, but it was very representative of what I met in the exam, and then prepared. And also the clinical decision-making part of the exam was also, something new. You had to put in short answer questions and everything. So understanding how the exam was scored and was quite helpful. So I wrote that in the first half of 2021. And then I registered for NAC-OSCE, which is a requirement for everyone who wants to go through the residency pathway. And in understanding the exam for NAC-OSCE, I knew that it was mostly it was a clinical examination, and so the most important thing there is practice. And so I joined MedCognito. It's a group that there's simulation so we had 12 classes, and you practice and practice and practice. And I think that that's the most important resource for the NAC-OSCE practice. There's no book really for it. You can have the books, but you have to practice. You have to do mocks and all of that. So those were the exams, and then I got the IELTS, and there were the other smaller exams. There was this CASPA, because I was also looking into family medicine. I should talk about that later. And so that's it. I wrote NAC-OSCE October, October of 2021. So I wrote my 2 exams last year.
So did you get a superior pass in your NAC-OSCE?
I don't think I did, but in this year there wasn't a superior pass of that, but I had something above 1 standard deviation above average. So I don't know if that is superior pass. And for the QE1, it was also 1 standard deviation above the average.
All right. And did you have the LMCC too?
Okay, at the time I was, no, the QE2 had been cancelled. And so, but because I had 1 year of postgraduate training that I had with source verification from back home, which was my internship, I have the LMCC now, because all you need is the QE1 and the 1 year of postgraduate training.
Thank you so much, Toby. Very invaluable information. And I'll just say something to what Toby has said. Time and seasons, take advantage if you're doing exams. I did 4 exams to get into residency, and I added the QE2 as extra so that I'm not found wanting. I didn't have to, but for all 10 of us who matched, maybe just 2 out of the 10 in my cohort did not have QE2. So it was just a plus, right? And Toby said, the longer you're out of clinical practice, the more difficult, the less marketable you are. That is so true. But that is not to say that people who have been out of practice for more than 10 years don't match. They do. It's just that they try to remain relevant in clinical practice. So options that I've seen work are, some people begin to go home back and forth, practice in their home country, maybe for a couple of months in a year, come back, maintain their license. And then the second thing is having a clinical or a surgical assistant position. So working in a clinical environment. And if you're not even lucky to do that, you should, when you're in the process, be flexible, be open to moving. I know people who have left Ontario and come to Alberta to take up a job of a surgical assistant, which they did for a few years, and they matched into residency. I know people who moved to Manitoba just so that they can be a clinical assistant in Manitoba, and then the following year apply to residency, and they got in, So don't be fixed on, it has to be this part of the country and nothing else, just be open, right? So thanks, Toby, thanks. I mean, that's useful. And Toby said something about the NAC-OSCE. He talked about the resource he used. So please check out that resource. Again, it is all about practice. For those who come from countries where you don't do OSCE exams, those simulations are great, you know, so practice, practice. So that's what we've gotten from Toby. So let's see what Dr. Olotu has to tell us.
In terms of exams, I did my exams during my medical school. So in the Caribbean, for Caribbean med school, you are really they are preparing you for the US match, and so at the end of your third year, you're meant to take the step 2 CK and step 2 CS, but they canceled the step 2 CS when I was going through the process. So I had to take the step 2 CK, and because like what Dr. Fashola said, that the similarities between step 2 CK and the QE1, I decided that I was going to do those two exams around the same time. And so I can't remember exactly the timeline, but I think it was between about a month, less than a month, or maybe 2 weeks in between my step 2 CK and my QE1. And in terms of preparation for step 2 CK, the gold standard is UWorld. And so that's what I use. That's the only thing I use to prepare for CK. And then to supplement that, I got all the practice tests from the MCC websites. They're super expensive for no reason, but they're, like he said, they're the most representative of what the actual exam is going to look like. So for anyone preparing for the QE1 right now, I'd recommend like getting your foundations with UWorld, and then once you have that, you can then now supplement it with the Canadian specific resources like maybe Toronto Notes or and especially the practice exams. For NAC, I also took NAC around the same time. So I took NAC September, I took step 2 CK October 5th, and I took the QE1 like towards the middle of October. So everything was kind of packed in there. For NAC, I also had a practice partner who was also in medical school at the time. And so every evening we'll have a bunch of cases. One person will be the doctor, one person will be the patient, and then we'll switch back and forth. We did that for a couple weeks before the exam. And then I think a week before the exam, I also signed up for this preparatory or like a mock. I signed up for a mock exam. I can't remember the name of the company I signed up through, where they kind of walk you through what the exam is going to look like. So we did, I think, 10 stations, and then you get feedback from that. And after that, they send you a PowerPoint of each station and all the things that you should have said or you should say, and things that you should look out for each of those stations. And I think that was really really helpful in preparing for the NAC. When I took the NAC, it was pass and high or superior pass. There was no numeric score, and I didn't get a superior pass. I only just passed the NAC. And same with the QE1. I don't think my score was by any means like mind blowing. I think the average was 250, and I had a 274, so it wasn't even just less than one standard deviation from the average. So that's my those are my numbers or statistics, if you might.
Okay, yeah. Toby, thanks for sharing and putting that in there. I'm just going to say something real quick. I extended our meeting, so I don't expect we get disconnected, but just in the rare event we do, have just created this new link. So just sign in again. So this new link is from 1745, but let's just keep going. And if we get disconnected, you know, but hopefully we don't, but if we do, so that's our backup. All right, so you've told us about exams, you've told us about who you are, right? Just giving us that background information about you, you know, and when we are applying your personal statement, so the things that get you called up for interview is your scores, your personal statement, your resume. So can you just speak to...
What do you want to eat?
Can we all mute our mics, please, except the speakers? Thank you. Yeah, so Dr. Fashola, can you tell us about what your resume looked like? You told us a bit. Have you told us everything? So in terms of your work experience, sometimes they ask you, our rotations in Nigeria are very different from the rotations here. They don't understand some of the equipment there, right? They don't do housemanship here, So can you just tell us how you arranged that resume?
Okay, so a little more of my background. In my final year in medical school, I actually came to Canada for 4 weeks for an elective pediatric surgery. At that time, I didn't even know how important electives were. I just had this free browsing on my phone, and I thought, what can I do with this? So they're sending emails to all the schools. I didn't know where Manitoba was. I just sent emails to all the schools I could find, and Manitoba got back to me and said I could come for an elective. And so that was my first time in Canada and out of Nigeria. During my residency, after my part one, after the first 3 years of residency, I also reached out to Manitoba and asked that, oh, could I come for an elective? And they let me come for about three months. I did general surgery in the University of Manitoba Health Sciences Center. So those two things are very, very important. And I think they were very helpful in helping me match, because it showed that I understood the Canadian health system, and I, an elective is such that you actually practice, you actually, help with patients, you even assist in surgery. So in arranging my resume, I kind of followed how CaRMS, because in the CaRMS website, which is the Canadian Resident Matching Service, it's a website that helps you to submit your applications. You actually put in a lot of information that creates some sort of a CV. So I just arranged my CV to match and to mirror what they asked for. So we brought up our electives right up the bat, because we knew that electives were very important. Then your education, and then I highlighted my postgraduate training, and I made it sound similar to the way they do their postgraduate training here. So instead of saying registrar, I used resident or chief resident for my final year. And in the CV, it wasn't just, highlighting the position. I also wrote, some of the things I did. Like, okay, I would round on patients, I would assist in surgery, just to sell that, okay, I had this experience. And then I highlighted leadership positions. I was the vice president of Association of Resident Doctors in my chapter in UCH. I was also a resident coordinator for the surgical education program in my department. So I highlighted leadership positions. And during my residency, I joined